Hey, YouTube friends, I have Kendra Wright on the phone or on the Skype for a podcast interview. So bear with me. Let me get the podcast started and we'll be off and running. Thank you. All right, Kendra, let's see here. All right, 3, 2, 1. Hey, folks, I'm your host, Todd Bergen, and you are listening to the Divorce the Workforce podcast. I interview entrepreneurs and online thought leaders about what they do, why they do what they do, and how they go about doing it. Learn about how they got started and why, and hear about their successes as well as their failures. Learn from them as you chart your own course to freedom. Welcome to the program. And I have a special guest today, Kendra Wright of AskKendra.com. I met Kendra at World Domination Summit 2016 in Portland, Oregon. I actually had met her previously, but met her first time in person in Portland. How are you doing, Kendra?
I am awesome. How are you?
I'm doing fabulous. I'm so excited to have you on my program. You don't even know. So
it's probably worth noting that that's actually not my website. My website is actually heykendra.com.
Hey, Kendra. But I was about to correct that.
It's all good.
Sorry about that. Heykendra.com, folks. Kendra, tell us about what you do at heykendra.com.
Yeah, so I teach people how to embrace risk, face fear, and basically just kind of build their own life on their own terms. So typically, if you're living a more conventional life and you feel like you don't fit in there, you're probably one of my people.
So how did you get started doing this?
You know, it's funny because I think all great ideas, or projects or businesses, they really just start off as something that doesn't look like that in the beginning. For me, I actually started a project a few years ago back in 2012, and I came up with this idea that in theory, fear is a feeling that touches every area of our life. And in theory, if I could change my relationship with fear, could it not ripple out into every area of my life? So I created a project, and every day for a year, I want to do something new, different, or outside of my comfort zone. And that project later became known as the Year of Fear Project. So I did the first year, and the thing that was really interesting is that nobody knew about it. So every day I was doing something new, something different, or outside of my comfort zone. I was doing all these crazy fun things. Just imagine that list of all the things you talk about doing, but never actually do. You're like, yeah, I should go sign up for, dancing classes, or I should go, take that day trip, all those things. I basically just made that to-do list. I basically turned my bucket list into my to-do list. So I did that the first year. And at the end of that year, after I'd basically stretched my fear muscle over and over and over again, I decided that I would go public with my writing. Something that nobody knew at the time was that I had been writing, kind of in a dark part of the internet where nobody knew me, in this hidden blog for a few years, and just polishing up, thinking that one day it's going to be good enough to share, right? And so at the end of the year, kind of the big hurrah was, I'm going to go public with this. And the ironic thing was that at the time, I had a lot of really successful friends in the writing and blogging industry. And the thing that ironically held me back is I was afraid they were all going to see it and think that it was laughable. So instead of really propelling me forward, it held me back. So at the end of that year, basically I made a list of, the 10 or so people that I was terrified of seeing my blog. I put it live, and I personally invited each and every one of them. And so that's how the blog took off. It came out of a Year of Fear project. And then I just kept writing. And then as people found out about the project, I became kind of known as the Year of Fear girl. And I seen it impacting other people, even though they didn't know anything about it and I hadn't shared along the way. And so I decided that I would do it again in 2015, only this time I would write more publicly about it. I would be bigger and more purposeful about it. And so in 2015, I did it again. And did some really amazing things. I did things that I'd always wanted to do. I did a police ride along. I did an EMS ride along. I walked into a nursing home and asked them to nominate me their loneliest visitor, spent the evening with a lonely resident just kind of learning about life. All these amazing things. And so that actually ended up, catching some publicity, and people started sharing it and talking about it and asking me about it. And that just kind of took off. So ironically, it was never meant to be a blog or a business or a movement or any of that. But when you follow your excitement and just share the things you're interested in, it's really kind of magical how those things kind of pivot and turn into awesome experiences and things.
Now, what was your life prior to doing your first year of fear in the dark internet world?
So the ironic thing is, a big objection that I often get, people see my life now, and I run two online businesses. I live an incredible life. Really, really blessed. I have worked my ass off for it, but I'm literally really just grateful for the things I wake up to every day. But the first thing that people always say to me is, well, you are naturally adventurous and interesting and awesome and all these things. And I just laugh because I always say, if we were to go back and look at me in high school, and how they give those awards out, like most, funny or most artistic or most likely to change the world.
Sure.
Like I would not have got any of those. My award probably would have been like most likely to be average. And I don't say that in this like negative way. The reality is I was lucky to be average because I was actually born with a 5% chance of living. I had a lot of medical complications at birth and was diagnosed with cerebral palsy. And for those who don't know what cerebral palsy is, it is basically most people that have cerebral palsy have a hard time walking, speaking. They're wheelchair bound for the rest of their life. It affects your movement and thinking, and it's a movement disorder. So for me, when most kids went off to recess, I spent my entire childhood learning to walk. And so because of that, I was naturally kind of protected. I was naturally not expected to, do all these crazy, amazing things. And I was kind of coddled a little bit as a child, as you would expect any parent would do, And so as I got older, I realized that I was really fearful and I wasn't really like adventurous, and I grew up really poor, so I didn't get to travel the world. I didn't get to do all these things. And so I was not, the person who was naturally adventurous, interesting, or awesome. I was basically the exact opposite. So I always tell everyone, if I had to fight science to stay alive and go through all these crazy things, like this isn't a pissing match, but I think if I did it, you can do it too. And so, yeah, I definitely was not, I basically was the perfect person to create the project because I needed it for myself. It wasn't made for other people. It just eventually kind of transformed into that.
Well, I saw you at World Domination Summit, and you are nothing like you describe pre Year of Fear. I mean, it was a decision to be that way. It wasn't, I had to decide that my life was going to be that way, not hope that it was going to be that way or think that maybe I would get lucky. It definitely was a conscious choice, and it's still a conscious choice, and I still am always working on it. I'm very grateful for where I'm at, but I'm still always and will forever be a work in progress. And I think that's why my life has turned out really incredible. I do have still challenges. I still have challenges medically from, what I was born with, but it's a decision over and over every day. And so is your comfort zone. So I have to continually, push myself to grow. And the things that were scary to me and hard for me before may not be the things now, but a year from now, I'll be bigger and better then too. And as far as expanding what's comfortable for me, it's always a work in progress. Now, as you were getting ready to start Year of Fear, I mean, did something reach a point that kind of set that off, or did you have a transition period where you just were worn out and you just were, you were looking for something new, and that's what you thought of? I mean, how, when you started the Year of Fear, how did you get into it at that moment?
Yeah, I mean, I think my life sucked. Looking back, I was living in a, kind of, I'm trying to remember if I was actually in the Midwest at that point, I think, or if I was in Austin. But I remember when I first really started studying fear, I had just been introduced to Tony Robbins. And Tony Robbins does a lot of work around fear and how we react to it. And I just started experimenting with, first I was like, I'm going to just try like 30 days, and just do something new every single day. And I did that and completely blew my freaking mind. I think most people are, coasting through life, and they are, if you're feeling stuck, if you're feeling bored, if you're feeling kind of unsure of where to go next, I always say you're the perfect person to take a comfort zone challenge, because you really just need to start interrupting your patterns. That's the most important thing. The biggest myth that people have about comfort zone and the challenges that I issue is that people think they have to be these giant, scary things. And ironically, some of the most rewarding ones for me were not the big ones that, get written about or people talk about, but some of the big ones were like, I learned to wear shorts with confidence. I had a lot of body confidence issues when I first started the challenge. And I remember, and looking back now, a big part of that probably, is geared in my childhood because I spent a lot of my childhood walking around in braces up to my knees. And so I was like really self-conscious about my legs. And so when I first started the challenge, a very simple thing was like, I'm going to actually wear shorts. And I lived in Texas at the time. So triple digits 9 months out of the year. And that seemed like a very simple thing, but it wasn't for me, and it was just, it doesn't have to be these giant, huge things, but it's funny how over time they build, because what ended up happening is I then later, once I got comfortable in shorts, then I challenged myself to buy a skirt. And my mom jokes because she's like, my goal in life is to see you in 10 dresses before I die, because I like was never girly. I joke that I just learned to girl like 3 years ago. And so I had to, basically after I started wearing shorts, I then was like, I'm going to start to wear skirts. And I remember like the day I bought a skirt, and it literally sat in my closet for like 6 months, and just buying it was really uncomfortable for me because it challenged my identity. And then later, I eventually started wearing skirts, and now I'm like known for wearing knockout skirts. Like I am a skirt gal, and it's girly and it's fun. And they're like, I just love wearing skirts. And that's a really simple example of one of the biggest myths that people have about your comfort zone is, how do you take little things in your life every day? It doesn't have to be these huge, giant things. It can be that too. And those are great. But people heavily underestimate the patterns and routines that they're in day to day that really affect their life. Because I know for me, specifically speaking back to the fashion element, I was never really naturally fashionable. And now I'm super into fashion. And I think a big part of that is because I became more confident with my body and started experimenting with stuff. And fashion is a really useful way to be confident in who you are when you feel good and look good. And that affects, everyday life for me. It affects how I walk into a room. It affects how I go into business deals. It affects, approaching people that feel more successful than me. Can you see how those are all interconnected?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing. Now, it seems to me that there's a theme with the girly and the clothing, or the, wearing shorts or a skirt or whatever. Are you able to look at your year of fear and find that there maybe are 10 different themes?
I think what I have found looking back, at this point, I have now done over 700 self-assigned comfort zone challenges. And so there's a lot. Because I'm still continuously always working on this and expanding for myself. But I think what I've found looking back that surprised me most is the most rewarding ones looked like the smallest tasks in practice. So what I mean by that is, like, for example, at one point, when I was still working in a traditional job, asking for a raise, that was a big, big deal. And, also talking, like in conversation, being like confronting confrontation. So what I've found is these small day-to-day elements where I'm challenging myself to ask for what I want and set boundaries and, introduce myself to people. Those are actually the most rewarding ones, because those tiny skills amplified my life to an extreme level, because they're so critical in all areas, learning how to ask for what you want, learning to be confident. So looking back, although there was a bunch of big, sexy ones, the most powerful ones were the day-to-day tiny tasks that I took, if that makes sense.
It absolutely does. So when you're talking about the exciting or dazzling ones, you're talking about jumping out of a plane or...
Totally. Yeah. The things that you obviously think of when you think of like comfort zone challenges. So, jumping out of a plane. At one point, once I finally left like a traditional job and went into a remote location, independent job, I remember buying a airplane ticket one way to a city that I didn't know anybody in and living there for a month. Like, those are big, sexy things, and those are great. But the big thing is consistency, and small steps is where the hustle really happens. So changes happen in everyday actions. I always say that action is the only way to traction. And so you have to make tiny incremental changes, and people want the big goal, but they don't like the process. So of course it's great to go fly to a city and, live there and yada, yada, yada. But like, I didn't get there because, on day one, I was like, yeah, I'm going to do a couple scary things. And then day 60, I decided I'm going to do something else. It was all those tasks between day 1 and day 60 that allowed me to make those bigger decisions. So I think people really underestimate small changes they can make every day that add up like compound interest in their life. And if you look back at the things that you're really like not happy about or like bummed about, say for example, like you're in a job that totally sucks your soul out of you every day, you probably got there by a bunch of incremental decisions, and you're going to get out of it the same way with incremental decisions, every day. So that's kind of my thought process on it.
Now you work with, you have clientele that you do the challenges with, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
So it's obviously people can't just drop what they're doing and go live in a city for 30 days where they don't know a soul. So, what kind of challenges typically are you putting your clients up to? What works for them?
It really varies depending on the person. So I have a course where you can work with me and I teach you how to go through kind of a 30-day comfort zone challenge. And you can do it a few different ways. One way is you can theme it on one specific thing in your life that if you made a change in that arena would ripple out into every other area and be really helpful. So for example, if you're not good at setting boundaries, I'll take you through and help you brainstorm a 30-day challenge based on how to set healthier boundaries, if that makes sense, right?
Sure.
Or if you're like, you know what, I just feel really stuck and I'm not even sure what the hell I should be doing. I just know that I don't feel alive, right? Because I feel like comfort zone challenges are the fastest way to feel alive again in your life. And so I'm like, all right, awesome. So you can do 30 different challenges. And then there's a lot of different ideas. Let's see. So for example, some of them are really, really silly. And then some of them are like more practical. So say you wanted to, say you were single and you wanted to put yourself out there a little bit. One of my favorite things that I tell people to do is, say you're in a cafe and you see someone who looks really, really creative. Walk up to that person and say something like, and I've heard this before, of all the creative people I've seen today, you are my favorite. And then you just walk off. So it's like a really simple thing, but a lot of people are uncomfortable approaching other people. So that could be a very simple one that you could do. Something that's really silly that a lot of people tend to have a lot of fun with is what I call the name game. And I got this from a good friend of mine. Basically, anytime you go anywhere that they would write your name on like the cup or the order, say for example, Starbucks, you go up to the counter and when they ask for your name, you can be anyone you want, but you can't be yourself. So you could say Beyonce, you could say Batman, you could say the color, purple. It doesn't matter what it is. But people don't realize like how uncomfortable they are in breaking the rules in just everyday life. But the reality is there are so many rules that we think exist, but really don't. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I love it.
That's like a really simple example of two small things. And the goal is that it doesn't necessarily have to be really scary. It's just uncomfortable a little bit, right? There's a little bit of tension. You're like, what do I say if they say no? You just stand your ground, and the funny thing is, that's such a fun game to play. And I've had so much fun with it. And you can play it over and over and over again. It's still uncomfortable for me. And so, yeah, I think there are a lot of little ways. And the goal is just that you get comfortable being uncomfortable. And then when you need to go make those bigger decisions, it's not the first time you've been uncomfortable and you build that muscle. They're still scary, but they're a little bit easier to make.
Very interesting. Now I have a question about the walking up and talking to somebody and telling them they are your favorite creative person today. Or look, I get that the personal development of breaking the ice and busting down that barrier is there, but has it ever turned into more like you're friends with the person you walked up and talked to? Have you heard any stories like that? Or has anything like that happened to you when you're doing any of these challenges where you actually get more out of it other than just the personal development? I mean, it becomes a friendship or something else?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there has been. What I've found for me, an example, is that I've actually just made friends. So like a challenge for me is that like I have a hard time developing relationship with female friends. Like it's just, I really jive with men. I think they're really logical and calm and women can be kind of emotional. And so not that I'm not, but for whatever reason, I noticed like this was hard for me. And so I made it a point to start hanging out with more women. And I've developed so many more female friendships. So it's very simple, but it's just like looking for those areas in your life where you know that there is a limitation. There's something that you feel uncomfortable with. Or I did the same thing with group aspect. I really love being one-on-one with people. Like I'm an introvert. like a hidden introvert. People don't believe that when they hear it, but it's true. And so last year at the beginning of the year, I started challenging myself to create, all these group experiences. And I made a ton of new friends just by being the connector, because I had all these amazing people around me, but I felt really afraid to mix them because I was like, what if so-and-so, what if Susie hates Debbie, right? Or what if Jack thinks Joe's an ass, like, or they're just different, like different kinds of people. And watching that come together, and then having people come back to me with the feedback saying like, man, that was such a killer experience. That was super fun. And it helped me build my friendships, better, because I wasn't able to really keep up with a lot of friendships one-on-one. So it's really interesting how internally it can create a lot of experiences for you and the people you love, but also just introduce you to new people. There's a million ways that it can really do that.
Now, are you in the middle of a year of fear right now?
My life is a year of fear.
Okay.
I don't do like, so, I've done two. So in 20, I think it was, I'm kind of later in the day, so I'm kind of forgetting the dates a little bit. I think it was 2013. I did the first one. Yeah. 2013 was the first one. And then I did another one in 2015. So I've done 2 full years. And then, in between I've done them, and I keep track of the challenges that I do for myself. I do a journal. And, but for me, after I did both the year of fears, I then had to ask myself, how do I make this habit a lifestyle? Because that's what I think is really important. I don't want it to just be something I do when I'm in a year-long sprint, right? So it's the same way you would do fitness, right? It's like, all right, I lost 30 pounds. How do I not get fat again? So now I work it into just it's become a lifestyle for me. And also because I've done so many, my radar is like always up. And I think for me, what became really powerful, and this is an exercise I would really encourage your audience to do, is think about, the last 3 things you did that you were really proud of or really excited about, or last really big, 3 memories you made. And I can almost guarantee you with 100% probability that none of them were in your comfort zone. Maybe you took on a project that you felt underqualified for. Maybe you took your family on a, interesting day trip, or you did a different kind of date night with your wife. Look back at, just even some of the projects or experiences that you were excited about, and you'll often find they're not in your comfort zone. And when I realized that all my favorite memories and biggest accomplishments were not in my comfort zone, it really helped me understand that this had to be a lifestyle. It couldn't just be, a sprint. And so now I'm at that point where I'm really integrating it as a lifestyle, and I'm also teaching other people how to solve problems in their lives using what I call basically a challenge-based approach. So, for example, again, if you're not used to standing up for yourself, or people walk all over you, I would help you create a challenge for 30 days that could help you really confront that issue and really make progress there. So my whole life is really just a year of fear project at this point. It's a lifestyle for me.
And you're enjoying it, but a lot of people would find that to be chaotic. So when you've got somebody who's considering this, how do they get started? I mean, but it almost seems like in a way, you've got to turn your life upside down.
No, I think that's a top level assumption that many, many people make. And I think that's easy to make. But, if just to get started, if you do 7 things and then, in the next 7 days, 1 a day, just do a week, just try it out, and if you need some ideas, I can give you a link at the end of the show if you want. I put together 100 of my favorite ideas, but just try 7 days straight, see how that goes. Then you could maybe do 30 days, or, bare minimum, put 1 thing on your calendar every week that is, new, unique, different, outside your comfort zone, and be, conscious about it. Like that's kind of the 80-20 is, I think we're all just coasting through life. And, if you're finding that life is flying by way too fast, that's probably a little bit of your scenario there. So if you wanted to do the absolute 80-20, if you wanted to kind of kickstart it, do 7 days, 7 comfort zone challenges, 1 a day. And then after that, you could just do 1 a week. And I guarantee you, even just doing that 1 a week will make massive, massive changes in your life. So I think that's really kind of the 80-20 on it. You can work in a more immersive way, with me or on your own. But I don't think it has to be, you don't have to live the life that I live, because it's hard for me to teach other people about expanding their comfort zone if I'm not constantly doing it, right? So it's also an accountability to my students and my readers and just myself, because I've found it's the best way to live a great life. But you don't have to be crazy like me.
Well, and all of us, I mean, I think it's just human that you live a life where there are these hurdles. And so it could be a task that you could easily fit into a day. It doesn't every day have to be a jump out of an airplane, or the next day you're swimming with sharks.
Most of them aren't. That's the thing, though, is most of them are not. It's just like how, here's a great one. I'll give you like an example. If you're, for me, I hate to be, this is ironic because you saw me speaking on stage, but I hate to be in front of crowds. Hate it. I'm also not comfortable being like on stage. And so a very simple one that I started with was anytime anyone asks for a volunteer in any situation, I put my hand up immediately. I always go first. Now, every single time I want to throw up all over myself because I feel uncomfortable. I don't like being the guinea pig, right? I don't want to look like a dummy, but I always do it. That's a very simple thing, you could work into your life. Anytime anyone asks for a volunteer, always be like the trailblazer, or, speak up in meetings. Like that's a really great one. Just actually have something to say instead of like blending into the background. It's scary to take a stand for something. And I think when you do it in small incremental ways, you'll start to see the power of it and you'll become addicted to it. So that's probably a warning I would add. It is addicting because awesome shit happens in your life when you're doing things you're uncomfortable with.
I think it's beautiful. And I hate to just go on and on about the year of fear because and kind of nitpick at the various things you've done, but I want to know what your most fun challenge to yourself was in all of the year of fear projects daily or projects, on which one was your most fun? I'm sorry, I kind of had a hard time phrasing that.
Totally fine. Which one was most memorable, experience for me?
Yes.
I think there is a few. So, a couple of the really big obvious ones were that I left a traditional job and went full-time in my own business. That was terrifying to me. And I would have never in a million years ever been able to do that had I not had an internal fear practice. I mean, even when I did it, everyone outside of me was like, "Oh, congrats, that's so exciting. We're so proud of you." Like, yeah, I could never do that, but go you, right? On the inside, I was like shitting bricks for 3 weeks. I didn't even sleep. And, so that was a really big one that really affected my entire life. Now I've been full-time in my own business for over a year. It's going really, really well. From a more like personal, internal situation, God, there's so many. One that's been really kind of well known that caught a lot of attention is the one where I went into the nursing home and asked them to nominate me their loneliest visitor. If you go to my blog, you can see it on there. Let me see what the title is, if I have it on here. Well, let's see. Oh, yeah. So quit living to work and work to live. So I kind of talk about that story. And that one, I went into the nursing home. This is something that had been on my should-do list. You got one of those, right?
Sure.
Like, I should do this. I should take Latin dance classes. Like, I should take my wife to that great restaurant we always pass by. So this had been on mine. Walk into a nursing home and ask them to nominate you their loneliest visitor, and then you spend the evening listening. And so I did this, and I remember specifically that day I had someone who had planned to go with me, and like they totally bailed, and I had been really bad about setting personal boundaries, so I'd worked like 12 hours that day, so I was super zapped, and I almost didn't go. And I remember like a big thing I also talk a lot about is how to kind of get your calendar under control and create time for the things that actually matter to you. So I was like, well, it's on my calendar, I have to go. So I went, and it was a life-changing experience for me. And basically I walked into this 98-year-old lady's room. Her name is Ella. And she basically, I asked her, I said, Ella, I expected her to be, for one, this like horrendously unhappy old lady, because she was like the nominated visitor, right? And ironically, she was the happiest person I've ever seen in a nursing home. I mean, just completely ecstatic. And it blew me away. And the reason she got nominated was because normally her daughter had come to see her like very consistently, but her daughter had surgery for like 3 months, like was kind of bedridden. So she hadn't had a visitor in a while. And I remember asking her, and I said, Ella, what's the secret to a well-lived life? And she looked at me and she like grabbed my hand. It was like a very movie like cinematic moment. And she said, Kendra, take lots of risks, go on lots of adventures. That's the secret to a well-lived life. And I never told her, why I was there. I never told her that I was there on the Year of Fear, personal assignment. And I realized that basically in our life, when we get older, consider all of our experiences now, debits into a bank account. And when you get older, you're going to pull credits out. When you can't go out and travel the world, you can't go out and do all these new things, you're going to have to live off of all the deposits you make along the way. And what I realized is she had made a lot of deposits along the way. And that was a secret to being the happiest person in the nursing home. And I felt like after I knew that, I couldn't not share that with people. In this weird way, I kind of felt like that's the universe's sign of like, do your part and share your message because it matters. And here's a real life human being, the happiest person you've ever seen in a nursing home. And she's telling you that what you're doing is the secret to, a well-lived life. And that was really, really touching to me.
Well, I think that's fabulous. Now, do you still see her? Is she still with us?
So I do not go back and see her. One, I kind of feel like we were meant to have that one moment. Also, I think that it might be weird if some like random strangers always showing up to her. But also, I think that like you ever just have those moments where it's like maybe you meet that person and you have this great date, the first time you ever meet them, and it's like overnight and you run around the city and you have breakfast at dawn and it's just perfect. And you just want to honor that memory and leave it just like that. That's how I feel like my experience with Ella was. And the way to really honor her is to teach other people to live the way that she did. And so that's internally what feels right for me, and how to really spread that message and help other people.
I think that makes total sense. And I think that sounds like a great experience. And it's interesting how that jives with everything you're doing and became kind of a beam of light in a sense right down.
Yeah, it was kind of freaky. It was kind of like, there's just weird signals of the universe in you. It's kind of like what that felt like to me. Because, again, I never told her while I was there or any of that. And I could have really been sent to anybody in that nursing home, hundreds of patients, hundreds. And I got sent to hers. And I, intended to show up delivering a gift. And I walked away with one of my own. And so I kind of feel like it was like weird, eerie synergy that I don't doubt and I just trust.
Now, most of your challenges after the fact, do they seem like they weren't that big of a deal?
Yeah, but at the time, I wanted to throw up all over myself. Do you know how hard it is to ask for a raise when you have no internal like self-worth about asking for what you're worth? I was shitting bricks. Like those were hard at the time. Those were really hard for me. And one thing I talk about is don't compare your comfort zone to other people's comfort zone. Like I could have felt, maybe discouraged that like that felt uncomfortable for me. But the reality is everybody's comfort zone looks different and it's unfair to compare yours to other people. And so I just say, focus on what feels uncomfortable for you. Look at the opportunities in your own life. Now, like I remember the first time I asked somebody to pay me a couple $1,000s a month for their marketing. And like, I felt like I was Nelly and had like won the lotto, like I was like, oh my God, and so it's just, the thing is that it felt like the scariest thing in the world at the time. But as you continue to move forward, you'll look back and you'll be like, it wasn't such a big deal. And the cool thing about that is you start to see enough proof of that in your life that you're like, oh, I can actually do these things that are scary and uncomfortable and I don't like implode. And often really good stuff happens. Then you have those points of reference where you know that right now feels really big and it feels really uncomfortable. But because you've done it over and over again, that eventually you'll look back and it'll feel small. And then you just start to trust yourself more. And it's it'll always be challenging, but it'll be a little bit easier to move forward, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Now you do a lot of speaking. And I saw you at World Domination Summit. First off, are you going to be speaking at World Domination Summit 2017?
I don't think I will. I've actually gotten some speaking offers for 2017, and unfortunately, I've been turning them down right now. I feel like as I looked at what's the best way to make an impact and spread this message, I felt that although speaking, it's still terrifying for me, believe it or not. I seriously want to just toss my cookies every time I get on stage. I felt that the best way for me to make an impact was to really focus on writing and, growing my email list. If you go to my blog, it's really ironic because I don't actually post that much new work publicly, but all my new work goes out on my email list. And I've just been able to reach, thousands and thousands of people around the world. And that feels like the primary goal is, how do I help more people wake up? And for me, even though speaking is incredible, and I'm not saying that I don't want to do more speaking, I definitely will. But right now, to hit that number one objective, it's write more, create more challenges, create, really amazing content, and do that. So right now I've been turning down speaking gigs for like Q1, quarter one. And I may do some more later in the year, but I probably won't be at World Domination Summit. So the best way to find me online is just to go to my website.
HeyKendra.com.
Correct. Not Ask Kendra.
Yes, exactly.
Ask
Again,
Kendra
I have
is gonna
to
get so many hits. She's going to be like, man, where's all this traffic coming from? And she's not going to know it's you.
Well, I'm going to make sure that it's clear everywhere that I can to make up for that one.
It's all groovy.
Yeah.
It's all groovy.
So, that interests me. I looked at your website and I see that aside from the Eurofair, you do other things. You coach for various digital marketing and digital strategy, email marketing, sales, copywriting. I mean, that's a lot of stuff. How did you get into all that?
It's so funny. I always tell people I was really uncool in my early 20s. So this is a funny realization that I had when I was back working traditional job. I remember this one day, all the people around me were talking about all these reality TV shows. And I'm not dissing reality TV shows. This is just what they were kind of doing with their lives at the time. And I remember like swiveling. It was like an open floor plan. I remember like swiveling around in my chair with this like genuine sense of curiosity on my face. And I was like, how do you guys keep up with all these reality shows? Like, I'm genuinely want to know, because I don't know how you're doing it. And so one person chimed in and said, oh, like when I go home, I turn on the TV, while I'm cooking dinner, and I like listen in the background, and then after dinner, like we sit down, we watch a little TV and yada, yada, yada. You know how that goes, right?
Sure.
And I remember in that moment thinking, what the fuck? People get off work and they stop working, because what I was doing in my early 20s after work was reading marketing blogs and taking courses and learning Photoshop and going to, conferences on the weekends and doing all these things, because I realized that I needed a lot of skills to impact the world. And I grew up really, really poor. And so I just had this like inner hustle that I think was like hardwired into me to like do well and try to like make a living for myself. And I say that I skill stacked in my early 20s. So I learned to email market because I worked at a job. I took any job. One of the requirements for a job was I had to have an on-the-job education. So I wanted to learn on other people's dime. And so, one of the jobs I had is I was a project manager at an SEO company that was really badass at what they did. So I learned a whole bunch of like how to track things and how to understand what people are doing on your website. Then I went on to a startup in the music entertainment industry and worked with some of the biggest names in the industry, and I was doing email marketing. So I'm, sending, over the course of being there, probably sent multiple millions of emails. So I learned email marketing there, right? And then I moved on to work with a business coach. And so then I learned, affiliates, and then I learned how to do launches, and learned how to create courses and how to get people to pay you for them before you even create them, and, how to run courses. And so for me, it was, I just always focus on learning. And in my early 20s, I was very uncool because it was like a hyper learning period. And then I just skill stacked all the way through. And I'm 29 now. And marketing is fun for me. It's really ridiculous, but it's fun for me.
Well, considering your background and how you do your email, where I think on your website, you have 85% of your content roughly goes out on email and not on your website or anywhere else.
Totally. Yeah. People are like, why isn't there any new stuff on your blog? And I'm like, because I write everything to my email list. Because the thing to me is, if someone shares their email address with you, that's a compliment. That's an invitation into their inbox. And in the industry, in the world that we live in, that's a big deal. And so for me, I want to be, obviously I do post on the blog too. But I like to move fast and quick and break things. So for me, I want to be sending like cutting edge stuff. Like, this is exactly what I'm learning. Hey, I I learned this awesome tactic from my friend who's a productivity coach and it's working really badass for me. I can move faster, right? And I can send micro updates. So I really enjoy, I spend a lot of time writing my emails. And also, I think one of my biggest like rubs with personal development is that it's not actionable. So for me, I try to always make sure that every time I give you some insight or a strategy, I tell you what the next steps are. So I spend a lot of time on my email, and I'll be spending a little more time writing forward-facing content in 2017. But I just love email marketing. Like it's fun. I love that people can like just respond to me. Apparently people don't realize that like I don't have minions. And I respond to every email still. It's still me. They're like, oh my gosh, is this actually Kendra? And I'm like, of course it's me. Who do you think it is? I don't have minions. So I really make it a point to honor that it's a big thing, a big deal that someone would give you their email address. And so I also like to write, it's helping me write shorter content. So I'm not fibbing at all, but I'm also a marketer. So if you want to really read my latest and greatest stuff, you're going to have to get on the list. That's a big thing, for me. So
now when you're coaching clients who are trying to get started, would you recommend to them that they do the same thing? Do a kind of 85-15?
That's a big question. And there's a lot of different angles to look at that. I mean, first I have to ask them what their big goal is, like what do they want to do with an email subscriber and how do they want to, make an impact with them? I think the number one, just as a high level rule, the number one goal of every website is not to make sales. The number one goal of every website should be to get an email address. Because if you don't get an email address, you're not going to be able to pull them back to your site when you have new content. You're not going to be able to let them know about a great new course you put out. So from a marketing standpoint, I teach all my clients, the number one goal of your website is an email address. Optimize your entire site for opt-ins. And if you want to make a business out of online, you need an email list. That is a backbone of, cashing checks and paying rent is your email list if you got an online business. So definitely a big proponent of that. But also, make it count. Like, don't send shitty emails. Like, if someone's going to give you your email address, send them something worth reading. Like, it's important. Like, one of the biggest gifts that someone can give you is their time and attention. So don't break that trust. Make sure you're sending good stuff. I spend a lot of time writing my emails every week. It is not easy. Like, I will sometimes be writing emails. Like, I'll probably be writing the email for this week tonight at 11 o'clock. Does that sound like the most exciting thing in the world? Absolutely not. But I know that one of the most important things I do every week is send one great email with something really important that I think is worth thousands and thousands of people to read. And I think a lot of people don't think of it that way in marketing. And I think that's one of the reasons why I feel that my list is really engaged and really loyal and, they buy my stuff. So that's great.
Well, I think that's key is the engagement. I mean,
totally.
When people when you say someone's dazzled that it's you that sent them an email, I mean, they're going to be tuned in even more because they're just so excited to have made that connection.
Well, people get blown away because they'll ask me a question and I'll record them a video answer and send it back to them. I'm like, hey, Kendra, what would you do with this? And I'm like, all right, cool. I can just record this 3-minute video, explain it to you much faster than writing you a mini novel in your email address. And that totally knocks the socks off people. And, even with my course students, I've had a lot of students who are like, I don't know how you do this. I don't know how you send the emails to us, how you teach the course. I answer all the questions they have inside the course in the comments. I still personally respond to every single one, and then if they send me an email, they're like, how the hell do you get back to me within a day or two? And my answer is, you're my priority. You're on my calendar. I block off time to take care of my readers and students. What's on your calendar? What are your priorities? So that's how you do it. I've had multiple people say, well, this isn't scalable. And I'll say, I'll worry about that when I get there. Right now, I'm just trying to take really good care of the people on my list. That's a really great problem to have. So, it's marketing is really human to human, at the end of the day. It's what I think it's Digital Marketer says that. And I really, really resonate with that. And I don't forget that every single email address is tied to a human who wakes up every day and, does their thing and has goals and ambitions. And I don't disrespect that. And I think that, if you really genuinely care about the people that you're connecting with or trying to do business with or just people you're networking with, authenticity and actually giving a shit will go really far these days.
Absolutely. I can attest to that. I have an online business and I have the phone number on my website goes to my cell phone, and people are just
Totally.
floored that
Yeah.
the guy in the YouTube video is the guy who answers the phone, and it's his personal cell phone.
Because
So
you give a shit, right? Like you
exactly.
actually care. And also at the end of the day, like if you're building a business around something you genuinely care about, you get fueled by answering their questions. Like I love answering my students' questions. I get super jazzed and I'll give them like a really in-depth, specific, strategic answer. And they're just like, what the hell? And I'm like, what do you mean? What, like, this is what you pay me for, is to give a shit too. Like besides already doing that, but like, this is fun for me. Like, this is why I built a business around this, and not like, a lot of people ask me, well, why don't you teach marketing to other people? And I'm like, because I would want to punch myself in the face every day. Like, I love marketing, but I'm not here to teach you. Like, if you want to be a client, then hell yeah. Like, I'll teach you then because I'm going to charge you a lot and we're going to work together very closely. But I don't want to teach marketing. I could make a lot more money teaching marketing, but at the end of the day, it would deplete my soul. And I can't do that. So if you build a business around something you actually give a damn about, it's a lot easier to write emails at 11 p.m., or I'm, doing this email in between other, strategic client work or this interview, and so build a business around something you actually give a damn about, and it's going to be a lot easier to put time, attention, and care into it.
There's no doubt about it. Truer words have never been spoken, I don't think. Well, listen, tell the folks where they can find you, social media, website, all that. I know I screwed it up originally, but heykendra.com.
It's all good.
And where else?
Yeah, so heykendra.com is my website. Super simple. And then if you want to get that list of 100 different kind of comfort zone challenges or experiences, just go to heykendra.com/goodbye comfort zone. And that'll shoot you over a really sexy, well-designed PDF that you can print out or keep online and check all the things off the list. Super fun.
And are you on Twitter, Instagram, any of these other things?
I am, but I'll be really honest, and this is hilarious as a marketer, but I'm less and less and less using those, and just emailing my list. And so, I mean, you can hop on my website and see the social icons are on there. I think my Facebook, the funny thing is, I think my Facebook page is Sassy and Unconventional Wisdom from Kendra Wright or something like that. But yeah, if you really actually want to hear what I have to say or any of the strategies I share, you're going to just go to my website. That'll be the easiest, fastest.
Get on the email list.
Yep, because as you know, 85% of my best content only goes to my email list. So I ain't got time to do it all, just the things that matter.
I think that's great. Kendra, I appreciate you being on the show. I was very happy to see you at World Domination Summit. I thought you rocked it. I hope to see you.
Thank you so much.
It was great. Everybody was great. I think yours was in particular was just fabulous. Your story is compelling and fun and challenging. And I wish you the very best with everything that you do. And again, I appreciate you being on the program today.
Awesome. Yeah. And if any of your people, have any questions, I'm really easy to find and reach on the internet. I answer every email. So if you got a question, shoot me an email, say hello. I love to hear from everyone. And it is actually me who responds. So
fantastic. Well, thanks again, Kendra. And folks, you can like, review, and subscribe to the show. Reach out to me or to Kendra by email. Let us know what you think. And in the meantime, stay productive, my friends. Take care. Take care, Kendra.
Thanks so much.